Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Today we're going to go ahead and jump into crowdfunding. Once again, this is a segment where we're going to talk about a couple of games that are on crowdfunding sources such as Kickstarter or Gamefound. And then we're also going to talk about one game in particular that has recently arrived that is a crowdfunding project and kind of see my initial thoughts on it. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the first game. Now, if you do have any questions or comments as you watch, please leave those and I'll make sure to address them. But let's go ahead and get started. So the first game that we're going to talk about here is Legend Academy. So Legend Academy is on Gamefound, so the competitor to Kickstarter. But this one seems very interesting to me. So first off, the reason it just looks really cool is it's based off of this kind of fantasy world, but not necessarily like the generic fantasy, as in storybook tales. Now, not only are you going to see the characters like Robin Hood or Little Red Riding Hood or Alice, but it actually goes a little bit beyond that. So you're going to choose a character, and kind of the premise of the game is you pick a character, you're going to school, you're trying to kind of up your skills and your technique in order to go on these large journeys and adventures. And what that translates to gameplay wise is a deck building style game. However, where you're doing this depends on the scenario you play. So I think this is a really cool approach. Now, each of these scenarios is actually a book of some sort. For example, here you are in Gulliver's Travels, and I think that's really sweet. So you're in this storybook, which is going to change the way the game is played, and it's going to change how you're going to be building up your character. Now, when you actually do decide to level up your character, you have these large player boards that you're going to be collecting these cubes on. And this is a really neat system. This reminds me a lot of something like Too Many Bones, where each character has their own personalized tech tree. And when you level up, you put your cubes there, and the matching color cube and the title of that cube will tell you which cards that you're going to be adding to your deck. So not only are you constructing this deck all on your own, but it's tied to this tech tree. And of course, you're going to be choosing different things based on, whatever situation you're in. So Gulliver's Travels might call for, you to go down this green path. But if you're going to maybe be in the Jungle Book, you might have to do something more aggressive. You may have to eat the cake. So you're not sure exactly what you're doing. Now, after you do your main action on the board, you're going to have a chance to upgrade your character by visiting the school itself. And when you visit the school, you have a couple of options. You can collect some money, which will help you maybe potentially get more items and gold. You can go ahead and get new abilities. You can also claim these tokens here, these goals, and these are going to give you points as well. They might have you with mini objectives that you'll complete as you play. Now, I thought this is really cool. Now, in addition, if you buy this Kickstarter edition, you do get all of these fancy components, of course. It is the deluxe edition on here. There will be a regular retail version available, but this deluxe edition has some cool things. The first thing, it has a lot of new scenarios. For example, The Lost World is one of those scenario books you can play in. And remember, each of these scenarios is a different way to play. It's kind of like an expansion, but also kind of built into that core of the game. So obviously The Lost World is going to have everything relating to those works. You also have some fun new miniatures, new characters. In this case, they have new washes. Paul Bunyan is a new adventure, which is really cool. Backer voted, so you actually have some say in what you're saying. They also just recently got the dual layer player boards, which of course is just super nice. So once again, I think the biggest draw here is that the game itself is going to have the character progression like Too Many Bones, where as you play, you're going to be leveling up constantly. So it seems every turn you get to go visit the academy and increase your own stats and buffs. And I think that sounds like a great, fun idea. So there's a lot of cool components, lots of cool adventures, and the way that it's done is really cool. So the academy itself, where you're going to be doing the worker placement, is a magnetic box. So you just kind of flip the lid open and boom, it's ready to go. All your resources are there at the top. You actually will be upgrading your cards using the card crafting system that's seen in Mystic Vale and Edge of Darkness, which we'll be talking about later. But you're actually going to slide them into the front so you can increase your cards as opposed to just culling them, which I think is really cool. And then each character also, like we said, has their own specific decks, specific tokens, and they're just going to be a lot of fun kind of exploring all the different worlds. I think that's really cool. But I really do think my favorite thing here is that skill tree. I think it's just a blast. I think that's a great way to tie in things. So in Too Many Bones, you have the skill tree that gives you dice. In this, you have the skill tree that gives you cards. And I love that you can really just see what the card is. You can look at it. It's in your private inventory. You can go check it out. I think that's really awesome. Now, the other cool thing that my second favorite thing has to be the adventure system. I love that the novels are based on these works. Like you can play The Jungle Book, The Odyssey. How fun is that? Treasure Island, Wizard of Oz. And each of these is going to offer a brand new scenario, something to jump in. And I just think that's amazing. And Scylla totally agrees with me here. She says, just about to say it, too many Bones vibes. And I agree. And that's really what pulled me in. I think it's a great approach and it looks like a lot of fun. So I'm actually torn on this one. This is one that I am legitimately considering. The entry price is not too bad. If we go to back the project, it's about $70, $30 off for the deluxe edition. You're getting extra characters. You're getting those increased stats. You're getting all of the additional worlds that you get to go to, new exclusive Kickstarter cards, new mini expansions. I think that's pretty great. And this is the kicker, I think. The Paul Bunyan here is a cooperative expansion. So it can give you that Too Many Bones feel because, you know, that one is cooperative only, but you can take this cool storytelling mode and do it there. So this is one that I am a little bit torn on. All these projects that I'm picking this week are things that I think look really cool, and you can sway me one way or the other way, but they're all things that I am interested in looking forward to. So that is my first game I wanted to talk about. This is what is it? Legend Academy. Legend Academy. So it looks great, looks fantastic. Is this something you're interested in? Is this something that you would like to check out? I'd love to hear what you think. Yeah, just go ahead and share in the comments if you have any interest in this. Now, the next game I want to talk about is Arydia, The Paths We Dare Tread. So this is a fantasy adventure game. Now, the thing that really makes this one stand out for me is the system itself. So in this one, not only are you traveling around this map, but the big thing here is this map itself has these like things that you can push out. So you can see it a little bit here. These large tiles, you're basically going to be traveling from tile to tile, punching things out. Think something like, what is the game? Rise of Queensdale, where you're actually going to be taking out the discs. And when you pull out these discs, underneath you'll have some type of adventure or something. And these adventures abstract out into these small areas. If you actually decide to go explore, you're going to meet, you know, this area here. It's a kind of like a stack of cars that you'll lay out, and each of them will offer different opportunities, things you can explore, things you can interact with. And think I was watching Jeremy Howard's video on this, and he compared it to something like Animal Crossing, where you see a place, you can go in, and as soon as you go in, it kind of folds out into a map that you can explore. And I think that's really neat. I think that's a cool way to do this, where not only are you getting the from above view of the world, but you're also getting nice up close and personal with that world, and you're able to actually play and explore in it. And I think that's really neat. In addition, the leveling up system here seems very straightforward. You have lots of these skill trees that each player can get, and you are gradually going to be having these mini objectives in order to unlock them. And I think that's really, really cool. So the other cool thing is that, first off, the game just comes with painted miniatures, which is pretty awesome. I know that it just makes the game pop in general. The game itself is built in order to be picked up and played very quickly. It has this really cool save system where you have giant trays, and these trays, oh, here's that example of the open world, the tile slipping. I think that's really sweet. See how it kind of flips out and turns. Really awesome. And then they open up into these large locations. The save system, though, is really, really cool. So this is how it works here. Each player character only uses 3 trays. And these trays are going to store all your items, all of your stats, all of your kind of current abilities. And it's really sweet because everything fits nicely in these notches. So you have these large dual layer player boards. You can slot everything in, stack them back up, and then put them away. And I think that's really nice. It looks so good. So very excited about this. The other big thing here is the combat system. So the combat system here I thought was really interesting. It reminds me of something like, it doesn't really show you here. I have another picture of it here. Let me pull it up for you. But the combat system here really reminds me of the combat in Sleeping Gods, actually. So in Arydia, the combat system is done using patterns. So as you can see here, all of these cards, they kind of have these cubes kind of aligned on them. You can't see it very well here, but whenever you fight something, you'll be able to put a pattern of cards down or a pattern of symbols. So it might be, it's kind of like a polyomino, right? You can put something that's, you know, an L shape or a straight line, and that's your hit. That's the damage that you've done to this character. And you're trying to be as efficient as you can with this damage by using your different weapons and whatnot. So if you lay it down straight down, fantastic, you'll get it. If you lay it from side to side, awesome, maybe you boxed in. So you're really trying to be creative in your combat. And once again, it reminds me of something like Sleeping Gods or Kingdom Rush, where yes, you want to be efficient, but you also want to be hitting big damage and, you know, finishing off these things. That might require you to use a large weapon to fight off something that's, you know, only has a hit point left. So I think the combat here is very interesting with having to be very, you know, careful in your timing. It looks fantastic. Ooh, going back to Legends Academy here, Scylla does have a response here. She says it looks fantastic. The literature aspect is interesting, but she worries about the story immersion, what it's going to be like. And that makes sense to me. I mean, you can only bring in so much theme if you're bringing in, you know, you're using that setting as mechanics first, is what it looks like. I was looking at the gameplay, and for Gulliver's Travels, one thing that they did was you would receive points if you knocked out some of the enemies that were around, or if you attacked the castles. And ultimately, it wasn't extremely thematic, in my opinion. When you attacked a castle, all you had to do was play like 3 cards of the same type. So I don't think the, you know, thematic connectedness is that insane. I think that this is going to be more something like Etherfields, where yes, you have this really cool theme, this really cool art, but you're ultimately looking for matching symbols and things like that. So I don't think it's going to be crazy thematic, because remember, this system is going to apply to all of these different scenarios, and it has to be cross-compatible with every character. So I think there's only so much they can do in order to keep that that thematic connection there. So I think a lot of it's going to be on the player end, but hopefully the character decks are thematic enough, and that's what it looks like to me. Each character does feel unique in their upgrade path. So I'm excited to see that. It looks really cool. So Legend Academy looks great. But back to Arydia here. This one looks really fantastic to me. I love the production here. I love the color. The thing that kind of actually scares me a little bit is it promised to be a video game experience in a tabletop format. And the only other game that really has promised that as well is Tainted Grail. And Tainted Grail is one that I'm not too keen to go back to. Tainted Grail appeared to be this, it is this awesome video game system. I played the first campaign through and I had a blast, but I think it was because of the character that I was using. But then I played the campaign, the second campaign for Tainted Grail, and I chose a different character, and I've had a miserable experience with this character. So I do think that I'm probably just going to switch characters, because it's honestly, maybe that's the issue. The character that I'm using is just not very good. But I think that it's very character dependent. So I hope that Arydia is, you know, when it promises to be a video game, it's taking that, let's say that Sleeping Gods approach, where it's an open world, it's an adventure, you have this great leveling up system, and it's not going to be carrying over the grinding and, you know, kind of the nuisance there. I hope that it focuses on just getting you in, getting you out, letting you have a fun, letting you enjoy this world and telling a fantastic story. So Tales of Arydia, another one that I think looks incredible. I'm so excited to learn more about this and potentially give it a try in the future. And if you did not know, this is by the same people who did Ja, Legends of a Drift System. So a lot of solid pedigree here when it comes to the design teams. This is very cool. I'm very excited to learn more about this. If you've heard of this game, or if this is something you're interested in, what do I need to hear from you to push me over the edge to go ahead and jump in on this one? I'm quite excited once again, and it looks fantastic. Once again, love the painted miniatures. I love this idea of this world. It looks great. All right, the next thing that we're going to talk about here is an expansion to a game that we actually already have in the SideGame library, and this is going to be Edge of Darkness, the Emissaries of the Vale. So this one here is simply just a more stuff expansion for Edge of Darkness, which I honestly don't think the game really needs personally, but more variability is always good for a game, in my opinion, especially when it comes with new ideas, new takes on the mechanics present. I think it's always fun to play in the sandbox of a game system, and I think Edge of Darkness has a really cool system. So this one in particular is going to add, it looks more like druidic expansions. You have this new world here. You've got lots of new token types that are going to be connected to the cards. So if you're not familiar with the game is a card crafting system. So you're going to be having these locations, and when you visit the locations, you'll be able to use the abilities. And so it's a worker placement game, but also kind of a deck and card constructing game. So each of these new cards is potentially going to use these tokens. So you have growth tokens, Gaia's blessings tokens. As you can see, they're very generic. Draw mana from the land and use it for powerful abilities. Most of the time, that means that each of these cards is probably going to use these growth tokens in a different way. So they're kind of just stand-ins to trigger the abilities of these things. And that's kind of how it's been with the last couple of expansions. Some of them have introduced new characters. They had one that was the Sands of Doomstar, where it was a desert area. And one of the tokens that they gave you were like these Spartan tokens. And I thought that was really cool because they were your own personal workers that could kind of punch other people out. I thought that was really neat. It added some interaction with the board. I thought that was cool. There's also those Gaia Blessings tokens, which are going to be the same thing. They're going to be tied to cards. But then you also get this Desolation micro expansion. So this one seems really cool because normally each of these locations is only going to have a single card attached to it. It looks like this one here has 2 cards attached to it. So you have some freedom and choice here. So there's 2 associated cards, which is really neat because normally you just have that one. So offering multiple choices for a single path seems like a lot of fun to me. So this one is very interesting. Now, my thoughts of Edge of Darkness as a whole, though, this is one that, so the expansion looks great. Like if you love Edge of Darkness, get this game. But my thoughts on Edge of Darkness, I'm really not actually sure about just Edge of Darkness as a whole. When it comes to Edge of Darkness here, my rating for it is only a 7. I think it's fine, but it's not one that I'm going to keep on coming back to. It's not one that I like ever asked to play. And it's one that I'm not sure actually needs to be in the library. It's like this close to actually leaving the library because I just don't know if it's worth keeping. The biggest thing that this game has going against us is honestly the downtime, and that it's killing me. And the game mechanics as well. I don't know the best way to describe this. I think the best way to describe this is just kind of explain the game and explain where I'm coming from for the game. So Edge of Darkness here is a game where you're playing a gigantic worker placement game, essentially. On your turn, you're going to be gathering cards from the center of the table until you have 3 in front of you. And so when it gets to your turn, you have this initial draft round. You'll pick cards in front of you. And then when it gets your turn in the actual game, you're going to be using these cards. And each card has a section on it. And each of those sections is going to allow you to do something. So it's up to you to decide your order of which of the sections that you're going to use and how you're going to interact with the board. So generally, what you're going to be doing with the cards is you are going to be able to place your agents, which are kind of like your worker placement guys, onto the associated spots. So if you have a watchtower card, you might be able to play one of your agents at the actual watchtower location, and then in the future you can remove him to prevent some damage from happening to you or something like that. So having to plan out what you're doing with your cards, and then you also get to add a card from the board to one of the cards in your hand to get an additional effect. There's a lot of choices and a lot of options, and that can really slow down the game. In addition, this has an issue where if you go first, then you go last in the next round, which means that if depending on how many people you're playing with, there's going to be a lot of time before it's your next turn. You're going to be waiting there a long time, and it can feel kind of depressing when you're just thinking forever. And sometimes it's dependent on what other people do before it gets to your turn. Generally not. And there's actually an interesting mechanic that they have incorporated to kind of help you plan for this. You see these little tokens here? These tokens are actually numbered. And what you're supposed to do is while you're waiting for your turn, you take these tokens and you actually put them on your cards in order to kind of show the order in which you're going to be taking your actions. So it's a way to kind of combat downtime potentially where, yes, there is a lot of downtime, but the way that they plan for this is they give you a way to plan for your next turn, an actual physical component to track your things. So you're like, ooh, I'll do this first, and I'll do this second. It's an interesting way to tackle it, but I think they're very aware that the downtime exists. Now, the other big thing about this game is the way the cards work. So these cards are the transparent cards, and when you use them, you'll be sliding them into the cards in front of you. Now, as you play, though, you'll be adding those cards to the shared deck, and then some of those cards will actually go to this large cube tower in the middle. And this large cube tower here is going to have these cards on display, but their backside will be shown. And these backsides here have attack values. Now, these attack values are generally all the same, right? 3, 2, 3, 2. But sometimes when you kill them, you'll get a reward. And I think that's kind of cool, right? Like your cards may be tied up there. You may have opponents' cards tied up there, and you can see clearly like whose cards they are. You see this little banner on the right side, that means it belongs to the purple player. And if enough cubes get into one of these slots, whoever has the most cubes there, you actually drop them in at the beginning of each round, that person will get attacked by this character. You only take 1 damage, but the strength value of that character, you have to remove enough of these protector cards in order to stop it from actually hitting you. So there's some cool choices here, some cool risk management. There are cards that allow you to move the cubes, allow you to attack the cards that are actually up there, and that's how you're going to get some of those rewards and extra points. But I think that ultimately the big thing for this game, to me, the reason that I don't see myself pulling it out a lot is it does a lot of stuff, but I don't think it does anything particularly exciting. And I don't know if maybe that's just because of the downtime, like maybe I'm just feeling so down when I play it, or if it's because of the game itself. I haven't decided yet, because there's games with lots of downtime that I think are okay. Actually, maybe that'll be true. I'm trying to think about it now. I'll have to think about that, actually. Maybe there aren't any games with like super crazy downtime that I'm a fan of. That's a good question. I might have to look back into that. But if a game is incredible to play, you may put up with the downtime, I assume. But I'm not sure if this falls into that category. I'm going to play it again today because I have to figure it out, right? We have a group of 4 that we're going to be playing with. So we're going to play at that max player count to see if that downtime really is a killer. And this might be one that leaves the library after that play. So we'll see what happens. But I do think it's a good game. I think it's solid. But I think this game might be best at 2 players. 2 players or 1 player, because that downtime is just such a drag. And once again, they're there, they exist. The worker placement, the attacking these characters, the fact that the cards switch up. But I don't think any of it is particularly exciting. If you look at these monster cards, I think this is a clear example of that. Yes, these monsters are here. Yes, they're fighting you. But there's really no difference or variation between these monsters. Yes, the art is different on almost all of them, but each of them is just a different number, right? There's no crazy effects. There's no like insane amount of like threat or agent or like urgency for these cards. They're all just a couple of strikes. And so when it comes down to it, you're really just, looking for the one that's worth the most points or gives you the most yield. There's nothing crazy game changing about it. And I think that's the big thing here is, yes, there's like hundreds of these worker placement spots, but they're all pretty generic. And I think that they use the system in interesting ways, but I'm not sure if the system is going to be something that I want to keep coming back to. So I'm gonna play it again today. I'm gonna see if maybe that it's just been so long and I just haven't played it again, or maybe I'm right. Maybe there's a reason I don't go back and pull it out. So unfortunately, that's kind of my thoughts on Edge of Darkness right now. It is in the library right now, but I don't know if it's going to be a game that I go back to. So hopefully it turns out to be, the better of the 2. I hope it is. It is just because it's been a while and maybe I had a sour experience. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, and then I'll give it a try. If you have any thoughts on Edge of Darkness, I'd love to hear them. If it's something you've looked at, it's something you've played. Do you like the card crafting system as a whole? Like we saw earlier, Legends Academy is going to be using the card crafting system. So I'm curious to see how it plays out and how it's incorporated in another game. I love the concept. I love the idea. So I'm curious. And I'll see if it pans out later. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump to the next section where I'm going to talk about a game that recently came into the library that we've been playing a lot. So this game is actually a pretty hot one, and this is going to be Ankh: Gods of Egypt. So this game is 3rd in the trilogy. This is fantastic by Eric Lang. I'm a huge fan of Blood Rage. It's in my top 5 of all time. I think that game is fantastic. The agency, the pressure, the customization, the intense streamline of the whole thing, the intense yet short battles, the constant battles, it's just so fun. I love that game. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Ankh: Gods of Egypt and my initial thoughts. Now, when we originally received it, I was like, okay, cool. Let's take a look at this thing. Let's punch it out. Fantastic component-wise. So right off the bat, it's great. This has one of my favorite mats in board games. The coolest thing, it's a double-sided play mat. So when you roll it out, it has all of the contents, so all of the separate boards from the base game, all combined into one. So you don't need any of that stuff anymore. You just roll up the play mat, and you're good. Every board is set up. I love that. And the kicker is on the back of the play mat, you flip it over, and on the back, it includes the expansion on the backside, and that's so awesome. So you don't even need to carry the expansion content either for the boards. And I think that's great. It integrates it extremely well. I love that in playmats. In addition, the component-wise, just like in the other games, particularly Rising Sun, this one here has lots of just quality of life improvements. They replace a lot of the cardboard with just plastic components. They're going to feel nice to the touch. You can paint them to really make them stand out, and they just look pretty fantastic. Some of the components even have like this foil shine on them, and it looks great. So that's just the looks and the aesthetic. But the game itself, how is it? So the game here has you playing as these individual gods. And these gods are going to have their own unique powers. Oops, let me go ahead and pull up a picture here. All right, so each of these gods is going to have its own unique powers, but the big core system of the game here is the action system. So on your turn, you are going to take up to 2 actions on your turn. So you'll be using one of these 4 core actions. So you're either going to move characters around, you're going to summon a character, you're going to worship, which means you're going to get the currency of the game, the followers. Or lastly, you're going to upgrade your own abilities by getting Ankh powers. And these Ankh powers basically unlock these supernatural abilities. But the interesting thing is, when you get to the end of these lines here, you're actually going to trigger an event that could potentially happen if you make it to the end of that line. Now, those events are, as soon as you trigger an event, your turn is over afterwards. So it's about timing. You want to be the person that triggers the event, but you also want to make it your second action, so that way you're getting the most out of your turn. But sometimes it might be worth it to trigger one of those events and just, that be your turn. So that being said, the events all come in different shapes and sizes. There are events where you can claim monuments, which are going to be ways that you're going to get points and have new abilities the more you play the game. You're also going to trigger battles, and then if you're the one who triggers it, you get a tiebreaker token, which is really cool. You can use it once during the battle. In addition, you can also do camels, which are going to actually segment the board, and it allows you to do some really interesting things like cutting off powers and splitting regions into areas that are going to benefit you and hinder the others. I think this is a really cool mechanic. The camels might be one of my favorite things, where you're able to control how the board looks, and I think that's amazing. So you have lots of different choices here, and that translates to a game where not only are the actions straightforward and extremely streamlined, because you do the action, you move the piece, it's done, but the game itself goes by so quickly. The game is so interesting, so tight, so thoughtful, and very opportunistic, while still not having crazy amounts of downtime, and your decisions aren't extremely taxing. This is one where you can look at the board and be like, I think that I'm going to do this, and I think it's going to be a solid play. You don't have to be extremely AP. You're able to make solid plays in these short amounts of time, but it's also fun and satisfying. Now, the cool thing here is, in addition to all of that stuff, the core system, each character is also extremely different. So as you can see here, we have 3 gods on this board, and each god is going to have their own associated powers. So on this left side, you have a power that's yours that no one else can copy. So you've got a moon here, and he's got this special token that he gets to use. And then on the right side here, you have the shared Ankh powers. Now, everybody has access to all of these. You're going to be able to get 2 in each column. And as you play, by taking that Ankh power action, you're going to unlock them. And you unlock them by paying this resource, and you're going to put them onto those columns. And I think that's really cool. I think it's really smart. Not only are you getting your own special ability, but each player's special ability is going to make them go after different abilities in these individual columns, because one character might use one stronger, one character might use one, at a lesser ability. And so you are constantly kind of figuring out what's going to be the best route for your personal style. I think that's really, really fun. So you have lots of different choices here when it comes to upgrading your character, but everybody shares those. So it's really easy to tell what everybody has. I can look at your board, see where your tokens are, and then know exactly what you're doing, because my board's the same as yours outside of your special ability. So I can easily track what's going on. I'm not going to get lost in all of the special abilities and one-off effects in the game. It is very clear to see what's going on, and I really appreciate that. I think it's extremely nice. Now, in addition to the gods being different, but first, let's go ahead and appreciate the sculpts here. I think that, first off, the miniatures in this game are crazy awesome. They did such a good job. I think they've done a lot of cool things with the creative freedom with the Egyptian pantheon here. I think the artwork is fantastic. The sculpts are incredible, and the upgraded components are just nice to have. The giant cardboard punch boards, which are just extreme improvement over the paper. The additional Kickstarter things added 2 new gods that you can play as. Once again, I don't think these are actually necessary, the additional gods. You can definitely have a good time without. There are 10 without the Kickstarter stuff, and there are 12 with. So it just, once again, adds more variety, which is really nice. I really like the added variety, but it's not something you need. And I think that's cool that you can still approach this game and not feel like you're missing out on anything, which is extremely nice. The other interesting thing that is variable each game are the guardians. So guardians are a little divisive for some people. In this trilogy of games, the monsters are a huge thing, where as you play, you're going to be attaching your bases to monsters, and these monsters are going to fight for you. So really neat here. The way that this game does it is a little bit differently. You're going to have a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3 monster, and they are tied to your leveling up of your character. So when you take that Ankh power action, not only are you getting a special ability, but you're also going to be getting one of these guardians based on how quickly you do it. If you're the first one to do it twice, you get the basic one. If you do it 4 times, you get the second one. If you do it 5 times, then you're going to be able to get the giant one. But the trick here is it's a race to these. There's only a limited amount of them. There's only 3 of the small ones, 2 of the medium ones, and 2 of the big ones. But once again, it depends on the model type. And generally, these characters are not going to be extremely overpowered, but they are going to give you a cool little ability. So this is an interesting mix of Blood Rage and Rising Sun's monster mechanics, in my opinion. In Blood Rage, the monsters, you draft them, there's only one, and if you get it, nobody else gets it, and it feels so good because you have this awesome monster that nobody else has. So cool. Love the Blood Rage monster mechanic because you're giving up one of your other amazing cards to get this amazing monster. In Rising Sun, the monsters are, I think, a little less powerful just overall. And once again, you're giving up your ability to buy to get this okay monster at most times when it comes to Rising Sun. There are some exceptions where some of those monsters are absolutely insane, like the Oni of Spite is crazy good. But here it's a healthy mix. Not only are the monsters tapered in their power level, but they're also a first come, first serve race. So I think it's a healthy mix of kind of the Blood Rage and Rising Sun systems. But I think it's done in a really interesting way. They don't really take up a gigantic part of the game. It's not what the game is about. The game is about developing yourself, and I think that's cool. You are getting access to these monsters, and I love that there are multiple of them on the board. So it's easy to tell what they do. Once again, this game is all about usability, I think, where anybody can look at it, anybody can play. I was talking to my wife yesterday, and she says that this is probably the most easy to get to the table of all of the games. I think a lot of people can jump into this one and get started right away. There's not a huge learning curve. This is one that you can really jump into and just feel comfortable in. Now, some of these monsters can feel very oppressive, but once again, a lot of times it's a choice. If you are racing to these monsters, you decided to do that. And other times somebody else might be, doing something else. Maybe they're summoning monsters. Maybe they're starting to move around. Maybe they're gaining worshipers. It is a choice on what you pursue. So yes, somebody might beat you to a monster, but ultimately you decided to not go for it. So there's some big choices here that you have to go through when you play. So I think that's very cool, though, because it is up to the player to decide what they're going for. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here are the battles and how they work in the game. So the battles are really cool. It is a healthy mix of Rising Sun and Blood Rage combat, in my opinion. I think that this is so cool. So the way it happens is one of those events is actually the combat phase. And once you hit the combat phase, you're going to go from top to bottom, just like in Rising Sun. You're going to go from the first battle to the last battle. And the order of these battles really matters because in the battles, each player is going to play a single card from their hand and use it in combat. I think this is so cool. So each of these cards, every player has 7 identical cards. You're going to play them face down, reveal them, and each player will resolve them based on this specific order. Like you always build the monuments first, and then the plague will happen, and then you'll check for monument control, and then people die. So you have a clear line of what's going to happen first. And I think that's really cool because not only does everybody have that same set of cards, but it's all about that prediction aspect, which is something I really did enjoy about Rising Sun, where you could put the coins out and you're trying to see what your opponents are going to be doing. There is still a bidding aspect, but it's tied to one of the cards instead. And that's what the plague does. It wipes out all of the enemy characters. But once you play a card, it's gone, it's discarded. So you won't get it back until in one of your later turns, you use this Mott card here, and it'll let you get all your cards back. So you have these really cool choices as you play because, at any time, anybody could have any of these effects, but the discard piles are public, so you can track what people are doing. And I think that this combat system is so straightforward, but also really interesting and really fun because in these games where you predict, you could get a really big payout if you're able to make a really good read on your opponent, or you could go for that surefire bet. But then the twist here is you have all of those battles happening in a row. So if you're using your really good cards early, you may have to use your cycle card to get them all back in one of your other battles and forfeit it. Or maybe you do that awesome prediction where you're able to make a prediction correctly. Your opponent doesn't play their strong card. You're able to cycle, bring back your cards, and then use them in those future battles. Oh, it's so awesome. You may just jump into a battle with a single guy just so that you can, trigger the effects of one of these cards. There's so many things you can do, so many neat effects that you can trigger here. I think that this really is a great way to do combat. This is one of my favorite parts of the game. It has to be the combat system. I think it's so well done. Now, Ankh as a whole, final thoughts here. I think that Ankh is so good. I think it's so well done. I do not think it's as good as Blood Rage. I think it is much better than Rising Sun. It is sitting at a 9 out of 10 for me right now. Now, I've only played the game 4 times right now. I've played it 3 times 2-player, which is actually pretty great. I think it's a great 2-player game, but I do think it's better at 4 players. So I've played it at 4 players once. I'm playing it again today at 4 players, and I'm so excited. This is one that I'm really pumped to just explore more and more. Now, there are additional expansions for this game. Not only do you have the additional monsters, there's lots of different choices when it comes to the guardians that you get to play with. The Kickstarter edition also comes with just lots of different choices when it comes to monsters. But there's actually another expansion that's called the Pharaoh expansion. And after I play it a couple more times, I'll start incorporating that and see how it changes the game. So the Pharaoh expansion seems very interesting to me. What it has is there's actually a person that's living in the land where you gods are dominating. So you have this person that is influencing the people as well. And they have a decree deck that is going to change the way the game plays, and it's going to give you little kind of objectives to go after. And I think that's really cool. Once again, you're working for the pharaohs because ultimately the game is about you getting devotion and having people believe in you. So if you have the support of the pharaoh, you're going to get even more support from the people. And I think that's really cool. So I think that this game is really neat. I love the upgrade system. Oh, it's just a blast. I'm having a lot of fun with this one, and I'm excited to play more of it. So on the docket today, Edge of Darkness, to see if it's something that's going to stay in the library and something that we go into today. And then Ankh, which is I'm so thrilled for. I think this will be a blast. But that's it for the coverage here. If you have any ideas or any thoughts on the 4 games we talked about, so once again, Legend Academy, Arydia, Edge of Darkness, and Ankh, I'd love to hear what you think about these. Do you have any comments? Do you have any more ideas, thoughts? I'll leave up the chat for a little bit if you'd like to add anything. Once again, just trying to have a fantastic discussion this morning about these games, things you're excited. Are there any Kickstarter games that I missed that you've wanted to talk about? We can go ahead and take a look at those for a little while. I'd love to hear. Once again, I'll leave the chat open for a little bit. I'm going to get a drink really quick, though. And we got Emily C coming in a little bit late this morning. No worries. Thank you for joining us. And once again, you can always go back and watch. We just love to have you here this morning. Are there any Kickstarters that you're really interested in, Emily? Or should I say Gamefounds as well? Because Legends Academy does look pretty fantastic. Emily says that she's running out of room. She saw Edge of Darkness. It is huge. So Edge of Darkness, the box is the size of a Gloomhaven. So it's picture perfect. It is exactly the same size, same packaging as Gloomhaven. So yes, it is big. It's a big box, but you can fit everything into the base box. And I think that's kind of nice. It even comes with the organization methods that are going to help get gameplay started ASAP. I think that's pretty dang sweet. So that's super exciting. So Emily says that Weather Machine is something that she's excited for. Now, if I recall, I don't think Weather Machine is on Kickstarter yet. I'll check, but yeah, I don't think it's on Kickstarter yet, but yes, Weather Machine looks fantastic. So this is one that I covered on Corporate Cardboard with Dan, and this is one that I think looks awesome. Weather Machine's theme is so cool. It reminds me of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, actually, where you have these scientists that have created this thing that is, ultimately supposed to help out with the entire the entire country with, increasing your yield of rain. But unfortunately, it's going to be taking all of that from other parts of the world and causing catastrophes. So it's your job to not only fix these catastrophes that have happened because of the weather, but also to develop your own prototypes for new weather machines that are actually going to do the job. And I think that's so cool. So yep. So Emily says it's not quite yet out, but at the end of October. So this is probably one that I'll talk about more when we can see the actual gameplay. But the game itself looks really, really cute. It's got that amazing, Eagle Griffin Games production here. The board looks really fun. I love the idea that you're sending out these little automatons in order to build prototypes of weather machines. I hope this game is good and approachable, but still retains this really fun theme. The artwork is lovely. Look at this. Oh my gosh. That is so awesome. I think that this game looks fantastic. So I can't wait to do this one. I'm always up for giving any game a try. So I hope that this one really, really pulls through and really is awesome. A lot of Vital Lacerda's games are hits or misses for me. So I'm excited to try this one. Are there any Vital Lacerda games that you enjoy? Anything that you would suggest? I have a lot of fun with Gallerist and Escape Plan. I think those are two really good ones. I think they're extremely thematic. And Emily says that she has backed Excavation Earth. So we talked about this one last week. What was the thing that pulled you in? I'm really curious to hear. What really shined in that expansion content? All right, so it's a solid game. Haven't memorized the actions, but still solid. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. Yeah, I don't really have much to add here. I am happy that you are enjoying it. And I hope that it's something that, the more you play, it clicks over time. So that's awesome. I'm glad you're enjoying Excavation Earth. Other games we've played that we're excited for the Kickstarter stuff to go. One awesome game that we've played recently, we played yesterday, was Catacombs. So Catacombs is a side game favorite. Fantastic stuff. The big thing here is in Catacombs, the new stuff here is a cooperative expansion, and I think that's a great approach to it. So they have new characters like normal, but it's a flicking dungeon crawl game, and the expansion is supposed to come with not only just more stuff, which I don't think that game needs more stuff. There's so much stuff going on, but the cooperative expansion for it sounds really cool. I think it's going to get it played even more because no one has to be the bad guy. And I think that's really neat. Emily says her motivation for getting Excavation Earth was to get the deluxe stuff in the first expansion. Perfect. I think that's exactly a great reason to go into the Kickstarters. And I really like that they have that as an option where you could buy the retail game. And if you enjoy it, you can go back and get the Kickstarter stuff. That's great. I think that's awesome. That's so good. And Emily also recommends Vinhos is the best of the Lacerda series. So this is one that I've heard a lot of, ups and downs on. We have viticulture in the library, and that's kind of like our take on this wine making game. But I hear Vinhos is more the business side of it, actually shipping this stuff around and kind of coordinating and calculating your sales. And I think that does sound extremely interesting. And it's one that I do really want to give a try. So I want to try that one. Great recommendation, Emily. I'll check it out. And Silly here says, loves the Gallerist, really like Vinhos, but couldn't get into Lisboa. Hasn't played on Mars. Cautious now. I have to agree with you. So Lisboa is one that I also couldn't get into. That was one that I had set it up multiple times, and it was one of those things where after I set it up, I kind of just put it away because I had no desire to play the game after I'd set it up, it's going to give me a lot of flack. A lot of people really like that game. And ultimately, the game systems are very simple in his games, but it's about like following the actions. And Lisboa is one that had a giant pamphlet for your actions. So the action menu, if you will, similar to something like a Food Chain Magnet. But the systems in Lisboa, they never clicked. And whenever I taught it, they never clicked. And so it was one that was not getting played in the library. So it got booted. Nobody was pulling it out, which is, that's the sign that a game needs to go. But I agree with you. Sometimes the Lacerda games are is it going to be something approachable, or is it going to be something that, you're not going to be people aren't going to attempt because of the steep learning curve. And it's huge here. Emily says that she's introduced 2 new people to board games today, Cosmic Encounter and Cascadia. husband and wife duo weren't willing to not ally every time. I think that's very, very classic cosmic encounter. If there's an option like that, usually it happens in a lot of games with allies. But I'm not gonna lie, like if I have a chance to ally in a game with my wife, I'm going to. It's fun. Like Rising Sun, we're usually allies, maybe at least once per game, but eventually we'll probably we'll probably break up in that ally sense. Gameplay reasons for the good of the game. But always ally, I think, is a little fishy. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Cascadia. I've heard nothing but good things. That company has done good stuff with Calico and now Cascadia. That's pretty awesome. And Scylla, you have agreements here with Lisboa. Doesn't know the history behind it, so it's hard to follow those thematics. And Scylla, I gotta agree with you here. That's exactly how I felt. There was a time where I was culling games like crazy because we just kept getting them in. So I just tried to play as many as possible to make decisions on it. And this is exactly how I felt. Just not jazzed. It was not something that anybody was excited to play. Like when it hit the table, everyone was kind of just going through the motions, is what it felt like. Nobody was ever excited to actually play the game, which is sad because that game was one of the most beautiful games ever. I think Lisboa has some of the best artworks. It was on my top 10 board game artworks because I do think it's a work of art. That game is gorgeous. I think that the color, what do you call it? The color palette that they chose is incredible. I think it just looks so good, and it makes me want to learn about the history of Portugal. I think it's really fascinating, the fact that a society was able to rebuild from facing so many crises in a row. I think that's pretty amazing. And then Emily also says that she's building up to On Mars, waiting for the co-op. I think that's so cool. I love that that's an actual thing. Taking one of these large, heavy games and adding co-op to it is going to get it played more, in my opinion. It's going to be something that you're willing to give a try because, even if you're not totally understanding the game from the get-go, you're not going to get crushed by somebody else. You have people that are genuinely excited and genuinely trying to help you because your fates are tied together, right? So I think that's really cool. I'm excited to see what they do with this On Mars cooperative expansion. I think it's fantastic, and the theme is hilarious. I love that it's alien invasion, where you go to Mars and oh snap, there are actually aliens there. That's awesome. I think that's so good. I'm so excited for that. Yeah, I'm quite excited. Like I think that I will also wait to try that game until when the co-op comes out. I think that's a great way to set that one up. And then Cascadia is amazing. Great end cap game. Okay. Terrain matching, animal pattern. So tiling game sounds good. It sounds like just a nice way to wrap up a game night is what you're saying here. So sounds cool. I'd love to give this one a try too. This is another one that we did not get the Kickstarter for this one, but I do see it that it's been recently delivering. But I'll check out the retail release and then, we'll get back to you on my thoughts. This is cool. You also have to let me know if this is a you also have to let me know if this is a format that you like. I figured that this would be interesting to do, just a couple of Kickstarters that I'm actually interested in, plus games that we actually received in the library, because you can see what like the fruits of these Kickstarters are. I don't want to necessarily just cover everything. I think that there's a lot of games that personally I'm just not interested in and I don't really want to research into. And I think that I really want to highlight the things that I'm actually interested in that look really cool. Another thing was, tell you if these new ones are worth going to maybe find a secondhand copy or going into... I've lost my train of thought now. To go to get a secondhand copy or one you can skip. Scylla asks, random question, what am I drinking? I'm drinking a dirty chai. So one of my favorite drinks. I'm really addicted to them right now, actually. So it's just half coffee, half chai, and then some half and half. If that wasn't confusing enough. And sugar, because that's my meal for this morning. So I'm a big fan. We just started back at work here at the high school and the middle school. So I'm back on the grind, waking up super early. So this has been really nice. And unfortunately, it's probably a bad habit and one that I'm going to need to kick. I think too much sugar is not so good for me. So I need to probably go back and try to slowly cut out things and move back to something else. So I have my water bottle here too. So I have limits on what I can drink, but you're always welcome to ask random questions. It's totally appropriate. That's what these are for, right? To get to know the community and to just have fun conversations, whatever it may be. What are you drinking this morning, huh? Emily says that she's started with Kanban EV and the timing makes it grr. Whenever someone blocks me from getting 3 actions because Sandra, is coming around. Oh man. Interesting. Okay. Oh, I've heard so many good things about Kanban IV, and it's one that I really, really want to try. A friend of mine has a copy, so hopefully I'll get to try it soon. It looks fantastic, though. I love the idea. I think the theme is great, and I was looking at the thematics of the game, and it looks pretty fantastic. I like the idea that you're all working in the same company, and so you have the supervisor, Sandra. I think that's so funny. I love that. I love that idea, and it's one that I really, really, really want to try. But once again, as Scylla was saying that, very much like, I don't know how I feel about approaching all of these Lacerda games. And let's be real, it's way easier to learn one of those if somebody else teaches you, right? And then you can kind of branch off on that. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited. Thank you very much. Super excited this year. I have a great group of kids. And yeah, I think everybody's ready to learn. We started our content on Wednesday. So everybody's back. Everybody's excited, and we're getting work done fast, and it's really cool. Parents are great. Kids are great. I'm so excited for this school year. They're doing a great job. This is amazing. Emily, your partner is a true MVP. Oh my goodness. That's wild to me. Oh, that cracks me up. Oh my gosh. I did something similar with Lisboa, actually, where I wanted to play it and really get the ideas and the strategies, but Ariana was not having it. So I think she played maybe once or twice, and then she was not about it. I don't think she thought the gameplay was that satisfying, and that might be another reason that I left, because it's just such a negative experience for her. But she and I both agree that it's one of the most beautiful games we've ever had in the library. Lisboa is also the reason that I never ship games anymore. So when it comes to selling games, I always sell locally and I'll never ship them because you take such a hit on the shipping and handling, and most people aren't willing to pay it. So when we sold Lisboa, we put it up we always sell it at MSRP because there's no reason to overcharge for a game. Because if you do, a lot of the times it won't sell very quickly. So a lot of the times we'll either sell it at MSRP or about $10 under. And that's usually what's going to happen. The only cases where we don't do that are if the game holds its value exceptionally, like Kingdom Death Monster models. Those are always going to go for ridiculous amounts. And so you can generally make quite a lot on those, which is pretty great. But for most games, if you're getting rid of them, people probably know they're not that good anyways. But for Lisboa, we did go MSRP like standard because that game does have an audience, but it's not one that people can't get readily available. So that one, oh man, it had the metal coins and stuff too in it. And so the weight was just ridiculously increased. And yes, Emily is put in here. She says that she shipped Dice Throne and had to split the shipping costs. Same thing with me. Yes. I even asked for help with the shipping afterwards because it came out to be way more than we had agreed on. It was bad. So I think selling that, we only made like $40, something like that, on like the $120 Kickstarter with the extra bits and stuff. It was rough. So after that, we were just like, never again. This is not going to happen. So luckily in Colorado Springs, there's a huge gaming population. I'm lucky enough to be in a lot of different groups on like Facebook where you can easily find something that's going to find a game. I can sell a game in a day, which is pretty awesome. So a lot of the times I would rather have somebody just come and pick it up and buy it from me, and I'd sell it like maybe $10 more less than I would normally, which is crazy. So I'm constantly just being like, hey, if you come here, you can get all these games for a ridiculously good price because we're not going to use them. We're not keeping them. They're out of here. Like there's no reason to keep them. And I think it's been a very healthy thing. And it's made it feel not as bad to consistently get games because we're pushing through them. It's something that we're constantly we're looking for the best ones. And I think we're doing a good job. I think our library is pretty dang well managed. We've played about 700 different titles, but we're only down to about 400 something. I think we have about 450 in the library right now. So it's interesting. Yeah, we've had to get a couple more shelves. Right now we have the box throne system all laid out. It's pretty cool. Like we actually have, we're not even at capacity right now. We have room for more. Even Ankh didn't push us over. So we have room for about, I would say, 20 more titles at this point with our current shelving systems. but then we're bringing in more, which should allow us to hold another 60. It should be good. So we have about 100 games more that we will be able to fit in the next couple months here. And as you see with the constant Kickstarter stuff, if you're watching the monthly updates that we do at the start of every month, where you talk about what has come into the library, you'll see that there are just a whole bunch of games that we're constantly getting in, and so having the room for that is really nice, especially when we're able to push out stuff. So I mean, if if things don't go well today with Edge of Darkness, we'll have even more room. So I really hope that it's really just a negative experience and not the game as a whole, because it has a lot to offer. But I felt this with a lot of games recently, where yes, they have sound mechanics, but the mechanics just aren't anything exciting or crazy. I felt that with a lot of games recently. Emily C. here says that local game store is doing an auction over Labor Day weekend. Ooh, that is great. I love those. And yep, bring all your games. It's amazing. So I love stuff like that. There's a great store here in Colorado Springs, Gamers Haven, that does an auction like this. And honestly, I don't really go to them because usually I sell the games right away and they go. I never really have to bring them in an auction. And I don't like that extra step of having to go. And then normally you have to like reserve a table and wait. But I think it's a great option for people that don't sell games as consistently, especially if you're bringing 10 games. Holy cow, good luck with that. New gamers, you have about 200 games. Holy cow. Too soon to scare people. I think you're going to be fine. I think it's more exciting and intriguing than it is scary for most people. A lot of people will ask about that stuff from me, and they don't understand. They don't realize that I own my business when I meet a lot of people, because I'll meet them in the teaching field, and then they'll see it and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, what is happening?" It's pretty cool. I think it's really neat. It's cool to open up that kind of stuff. I'm a fan. And then Scylla says, how to sell games for like $10 to $20. Yep. I totally feel you. I had, what were 3 games? So I'll give you a little sneak peek on the next culling video that we're going to talk about. We were in the middle of the move, and I just had to get rid of a couple of games. I got rid of Red Rising, Tawatansuyu, and there was one more that I got rid of. It was a set of 3 games. I forget what the third one is, but I know for sure Red Rising and Tawatansuyu were in there. But I got rid of all of them for I think it was like $50 or something like that. So we took a big hit, but it's out. It's out. They're gone now, so don't have to worry about them. They were not ever going to get played. Ultimately, those games were just not very good in our opinions. So we booted them pretty dang quick. So pretty sad, but yes, taking that hit hurts. But I think if you're able to recoup any money from a game, I think it's absolutely worth it. I would sell them in a heartbeat. Somebody else is going to enjoy them. Clearly, they're looking for those games because they're willing to buy them. So I'm happy that they're going to give them a try, and I hope that they're going to have some fun out of it. Unbelievable. It's fine. I understand you don't like it. It's okay. Everyone has different tastes. We'll enjoy Barrage for you, so you don't have to. You don't have to worry about it. Oh man. So I'm curious, Emily and Scylla, what are the games that you play most constantly? What are the things that you're looking for and that are actually convincing you to buy more games? I'm curious. I think that would be interesting. And we'll go ahead and wrap up the stream here in a couple minutes here. If you have any more questions or comments, please leave them below. All right, we got a couple more comments from Emily here. She's really a fan of Tableau building, so playing a lot of Fantastic Factories. I was quite impressed with that game. I think it's a lot of fun. I love the dice placement. I love your customization. I love the simultaneous play. I think it's just a great little game. I think the artwork is hilarious and, whimsical. It cracks me up. I think it's pretty fantastic. And then also Paladins. I'm also a big fan of Paladins West Kingdom. My second favorite from that trilogy. I think it's really, really solid two-player and solo game. I think it's a blast. I love your personalized player boards. I love the timing of your Paladins. I love the different ways that you're able to approach the tracks, and I'm really excited for the new expansion. I think it'll be a great addition, adding your own like personal goals on top of everything else. I think that's going to be a great way to kind of mix up your strategies because you have that fourth thing you're going for. That's equally as important. So I'm excited to try that one out. It looks like a blast, and who doesn't want more Paladins, right? I'm pumped. I think it'll be great. And then Scylla here, FOMO is real. Yeah. Yeah, it can suck, but I think it'll be good. And I'm glad that you were able to get something for it. And the moving stress is huge. I totally get that. Yep, I totally get it. But totally reasonable and understandable. Okay. Scylla says she's looking for something magically thematic, but not super intense to teach. That's the trick, right? Like a lot of these thematic games will have usually giant rules overheads because of all the thematics, right? You're going to have to, what's going to make it feel like the game. I have Nemesis is a good one that comes to my head where that game's got so many rules and so many little things, but it all makes sense in the thematics, but somebody's got to know them, right? Playing Warp's Edge and Under Falling Skies, easy to get played, totally makes sense. Oh man, Warp's Edge is so good, and Under Falling Skies is so good. I'm so happy that those two solo games came out last year. They are grand. They're short, they're small, they're easy to play. I got my brother into Under Falling Skies recently, and he's been having a blast with that. I just think it's a blast. So I'm really happy you like that one. They're fantastic. I love the dice system in Under Falling Skies, and I just love the overall experience of Warp's Edge. I love the bag building. I think it's done really well. And when it's always your turn, it just feels so satisfying. I love it. I love that system. Fantastic. And Still also says, really enjoying Hadrian's Wall. That one looked also very interesting to me. It kind of falls in that realm that you were describing where it looks like a hell of a lot to teach. A lot of roll and writes are actually like, because you have to learn every single little tiny symbol, but once you start playing, it all clicks. So I assume that's going to happen with Hadrian's Wall, but I'm going to wait for it for a little bit. Once again, it's retail release, so there's nothing crazy exclusive. I'll probably wait for a sale, and then I'll probably jump on that one. But that one does look very good. I like the artwork style, and the designers look solid, and the gameplay looks like a lot of fun. So I'm glad that you're having a good time with that. Lots of Under Falling Skies, and the Lobster Effect. Too much of a good thing. That's funny. It's a beast. Biggest recommendation for your move is little boxes. Yep, Scylla's got it right on the head here. Yep, small boxes. Better to have more trips and less stress on the back. It's huge. But thank you so much for your time this morning. Yeah, thank you so much, Emily. Thank you for the chat. Thank you, Scylla. Thank you for joining us this morning. Glad to have you. Thank you again for a fantastic start to our Sunday. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, if you have any questions or any recommendations, feel free to leave them in the comments. What games are you most excited for that are on Kickstarter now or Gamefound or any crowdfunding site? What things are you looking forward to? What changes would you like to see for the side game format, for this crowdfunding format? I'd love to hear what you think. But thanks again so much for watching. Side Game Strong.